Hello everyone, this is Ashish again. Today we are going to continue our Azure Bicep training series, and in today's session we are going to discuss about parameters, variables and output in Azure Bicep. So these are three different elements of Azure Bicep file that you will be using a lot when you are working with Azure Bicep, and in many of the previous sessions we have already used some of them. So we'll go through a little bit of more details, when to use parameters, when to use variables, and when to use output, what are their significance, how to use them, those things in detail. From today onwards, we are going to do more hands-on things and less slides. Yeah, of course introductory slides will be there, but yes, today onwards we will start having the feel of the code and start doing the things from hands-on perspective. So from here we will have a bit of more understanding of how to use Bicep and do things with your hands. So far we have discussed these things, and today we are going to discuss about parameter, variables and output. Like I said, before I continue the today session, I just give you the brief of all these different lessons we have done so far until data types. So if you have not watched our sessions in previous session in this series, I will recommend you to watch them so that you get the basic fundamental of Bicep till now, and then we can continue from, you can continue from here. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about parameters first. So let me just minimize this window and let me open the code. And okay, so it should be visible there. Yeah, let me. Okay, so today what we are going to discuss about parameters is that how to use these parameters. And after looking at this parameter the lines, you might have already seen these lines in previous sessions as well, so because we have used a couple of them in maybe from day 3 itself, or maybe day 2 also, if we have done some demo or something. So anyway, so today we are going to discuss how to create this parameter and when to create it. You can create parameters of different data types. The data types that we have in Azure Bicep we have already discussed. The string, int, boolean, object, and then array. So these are some of the most commonly used data types in any programming language, and the same goes with the Azure Bicep. Now when to use parameters with these data types, or other element that we will be soon talking about, like output or variable. So parameter comes into the picture when you want some information to be passed from the consumer of the script. Now let me go back and explain this. So you are creating a script, that is Azure Bicep. Someone will be using it in their pipeline, maybe CI/CD pipeline, or maybe they are using it with PowerShell in their terminal, or maybe they are deploying it, or maybe they are using this particular Bicep file to construct their infrastructure. So in whatever way, when they are using it, you may want certain information, let them to define. So for example, if we talk about example of storage account, so you may want this storage account location to be told by the someone who is using this Azure Bicep. So in that case, you define this as a parameter, and then when the person who is using this Bicep will run this Bicep file will expect them to provide a string value that should be a location, and then you are using those locations based on your use case. And so the same goes with the name. So here the name is coming from variable, but suppose you don't want to define it as a variable, but you want to define it like a parameter, then you will define another parameter like this. And if you want to have this as a default value, then you will define it like adp demo sa or 001 or whatever. Now here you have to be very here we are getting the array because So you have to be very cautious when you're creating a parameter, because you have to see what exactly the information you are asking. So for example, here is storage account name. We are asking like a parameter. However, we know that here comes the little bit of knowledge of Azure, that storage account name has to be unique, globally unique. And now if you will provide this as a user provided value, then you have to mention them. This has to be a globally unique value, not a very sample or demo kind of like demo SA 0 1, because it may deploy for the first time, because this might be a uniquely global name, but later on it will soon become a kind of a duplicate value, and then your storage account will not get deployed because the name is not really unique, globally unique, and then during the deployment it will fail. So when you are using parameter, then you have to know that this will be provided by user, and you have to make sure that those values are, they are aware that what exactly these values are to be used, or what are the limitations these value have. And for that, what you have is, we will come back to this file, something called decorators. So decorators are kind of way to put some kind of constraint or some kind of metadata on your parameter. So for example, here we have this description decorator on top of the parameter. So parameter is decorated by description. It can be further decorated by another decorator, and you can see that these are the values that you have. So you can have a allowed decorator, you can have a description. So description is self-descriptory, that it provides description of the parameter. Allowed means that what are the values that are allowed in terms of this parameter. So for example, if we go to the one of the parameter where it says that it's a enum value, and someone has to provide either 1 or 2. So no, it is not a free text that can be provided, even though it is a string type of parameter, but it only accept either this value or this value. So someone who is providing this value during the runtime cannot provide 3, 4 or whatsoever. So allowed decorator gives you the way to give a restriction on the values that are allowed for this parameter. Now having said that, this can be combined. So for example, here I am using allowed. At the same time, I want to put a description as well, so that it is clear to the person who is using it. Oops. So I want to put a description here, and I can say that this is this only accept 2 values. It can be it can be anything that you may want, like a message or something. Here it is very much it is very much irrelevant to provide the actual things in the description, like it only accept 1 or 2 or something like that. But you can combine these decorators with your parameter if you want to, and many times you may feel like using the descriptions all the time, and then it will combine with any of the other decorators. So for example, we have already discussed about description, we have already discussed about allowed. Now there is something called secure. So secure means anything that's supposed to be a secure string, and now here it can be a secure string as well. So it can be a string which is secure, and you can see that it automatically put the the decorator on top of it. Anyway, it is already there. So we are now, what does it mean? That usually when you provide any parameter which is not really secure, you have not decorated like a secure, then these parameters are visible in the logs, these parameters are visible in the deployment logs and other places. But if you decorate with the secure thing, then it will be used in the deployment, but it will not print out as a plain text in the deployment log and all other places. And we'll see that what kind of places it may show up. So if you are using some kind of token, some kind of secure string, some kind of password, some kind of API token, those things you should always decorate with secure, and that way you'll make sure that whosoever is deploying it will will be only the person who will know, and then after deployment it will not be shown to anyone who is kind of looking into the logs and other places. Same thing for maximum and minimum length. So you can define the maximum length or minimum length. It can be applied to either string or integral parameter. So when you are defining a storage account name, you have some kind of constraint that it has to be less than 24 and it has to be more than 3. So anyone who is providing a storage account name parameter, and we'll see that how to provide that, that's something will come in a bit, but whenever someone is providing that value, he has to provide either 3 or either more than 3 and less than 24. If he is not providing in between, then it will fail initially itself, so it will not go ahead and try to deploy and then fail later. Same thing, here you can see minimum length and maximum length, that if your array has how many elements you can have, so how many. So for example, here app name is an array, so someone has to provide an array value, and now it has to be between 1 and 5, so it cannot be 6 element array, it cannot be 7 element array or something like that. And the same thing comes with the minimum and maximum value. So you can have less, either 1 or maximum it can go up to 12. So you may have a scenario, where you want to give a value that how many number of instances you want, how many numbers of replicas that you want in any kind of resources, how many copies of storage account you want, or something like that. So in complex infrastructure as code scenario, you may come across where you need an integral value, but it should be between a range. So this kind of constraint you can provide using this decorator. So these are the few decorators which you will see mostly. I will just go ahead and remove this blank lines. So so these decorators help you to define the parameter. Now the similar kind of thing you might have seen something called variable. So variable is very much similar to parameter in a sense that you can define the value, as you can see here. One difference between parameter and variable is that parameter can have a default value, but it is optional, so you can remove that and then it is still fine. Someone who is using this file has to provide that value. That's the only difference it is going to make. But however, if you will keep a default value, then it will go ahead and use this value without forcing someone to provide a parameter value. However, in case of variable, this is internal to your script. So when you create a script, you want to calculate something based on parameter, or you may want to define a global value. So for example, you can say that environment name, and you may want to use this environment name in multiple places. So you can say it's a prod, and then you can use this value across bicep file. That is one difference, that variable is something that you use, but it will not be available for the consumer to provide that value. So it is not something that someone who is using this file will be able to change or will be able to define. It is internal to your bicep file. The use case of this particular type is that you want a global thing. So you want a variable, like we call this, but it should not be provided by, it should not be exposed to the external people who are using this file. So if you have a situation where you need a value which will be used across bicep file, but and then you have a confusion whether you want to create like a parameter or like a variable, then the one decision you have to make that whether this value should be defined by user or not. So if it has to be defined by user, it will definitely go to parameter, but if it is not to be defined by the user, then it will definitely go to variable. But if it is a middle case where you want to give a default value but still want to have a flexibility where someone who is using this file should be able to change it. So someone by default it will deploy a stage STG, but when a developer is, or when a consumer is using it, he may want to change it to prod, then he can provide a parameter during the run, and we will come to that point how to use this parameter thing in your deploy, in your bicep file. We will come to that point, but right now we are just talking about the differences between these two similar elements in your bicep. Now come to the next part, which is output. Now, like the name suggests, this is for outputting your value. So for example, you are creating this variable or parameter or some kind of resource that you have defined. So for example, I will go to this, and here we have this storage account and we have deployed it. Now after deployment, we want to print something out of this storage account. Now we can print the storage account name, storage name, but it is also possible that I will use this and I can actually look into the actual storage account metadata and print that. So for example, we are not defining the tags, type. We are not defined. So what will be the type by default? It will show here. What will be the other API version, whatever the things. So for example, properties, and then if I go into the properties, I can see what exactly the creation time was, what exactly the custom domain, if at all it has been configured. So it can print something which you have defined, like here storage name. So it can print that storage name, a parameter or a variable, but it can also print the resource properties that you have deployed using this particular bicep file. This is handy when you are deploying resources, when you are using these outputs to do certain things, or maybe you want to show this when you have already deployed this, and then you want to show it as an output so that someone can see, okay, this is the storage account name, or this is the storage account access tier, or this is the security things and all, so and so forth. Now here we are talking about storage account, but it can be virtual machine, it can be function app, it can be any resource, and then you may want to print specific property of that resource, and then you may want to use that property into a further bicep file. And we will get into this particular type of use case when we will be talking about bicep modules. We use this thing a lot when we are dealing with kind of bicep modules. Now with this, now let's go ahead and see how these different things work together. And for that, we have a bicep file, and as you can see, it's a simple bicep file, have two parameters, one variable which is being calculated using some parameter value, and you can see that these parameter values are being defined by either coming from a parameter, or these are coming from a default. When you deploy a resource using bicep file, you have to deploy it in a resource group, and that resource group will automatically be calculated using this function. We'll talk about functions in upcoming session, but this is one of the default function which will give you the resource group details, and then we are using that ID to do some kind of manipulation, and then we are doing the tool over. Again, this is another function that we have. So we will get into the details of these functions in upcoming session, but here, if you want to see what we are trying to do here, is that using these functions to define our variable. And now this is something string interpretation that we are doing to kind of dynamically create this variable, and then we are providing these variable value while we are creating this storage account. And then as you can see, there are so this particular variable is being created based on the parameter provided by the user, if at all. Otherwise it will use stg as a parameter value, and then it is doing the to lower. So as the name suggests, it is lowering the case. So here we are defining uppercase stg, but it will do the lowercase stg here using this, and then combining this stg with the another function, that is unique string. Unique string generates a unique string based on a value that you provide. So resource group id is something that we are providing. So every time resource group id will be always same, and that way unique string will always generate a same string, and that way when you deploy this storage account using this particular bicep file, will always generate a same storage account name, and that way you will not come into a trap where whenever you are deploying the IAC concept of deploying this infrastructure as code again and again, you are creating new storage account. Because if you go through this, every time you create a unique string, if that is not creating the same unique string, then you will end up having different storage name, and then IAC, infrastructure as code, will make sure that it is getting created every time. So that kind of we are ensuring that we are providing the same ID as a hash for unique string, so it will use that value to create unique string. Every time it will be same, and that way we are making sure that we have the same storage account every time we are applying this bicep file. Now once it is deployed, it will create an output file, output, and it will print it out. And here we are just using this value. This can be considered like a property of this resource, but it could have been any other property of this resource as well, or any other variable or parameter as well. Now having said that, let's see how to use these parameters, how to provide these parameters. So if you want to deploy this resource in Azure, so what you need to have, the first thing that you need to have is you have to have a group. So we will create a group with name bicep demo 01, and location is East US. So we are creating a resource group. We will come to, we will talk about how to create a resource group with the bicep file itself, but yes, that will come in the next part. So now if I will refresh my browser, it should have a resource group named bicep. Okay, there's the browser. And if we go to, bicep demo, and if you see that we don't have anything as of now, and if we look at, there is no deployment and anything like that. So now let's go to the code and do the deployment. Oops. See? Deployment group create, and here now we are trying to create a deployment for the group. Then the group name is this, and then the file is this. Now we are not providing any parameter value here, so it will go ahead and let's see what happens. Okay. Okay. So we are not in day 6. We have to go to demo 6. And here, if I go ahead and run the same command again, so let's see what happens. So when this is the important thing. So if you have parameter, and if you have not provided parameter which is not, which does not have any default value, then even if you are not providing, when you are not providing it, it will go ahead and check and see if it has a default value, then it will not complain. So for example, for a storage name prefix, it will not complain, but something which does not have a default value, it will ask for that value, and you can provide it here, or and you just type in there and then you can provide it, or I can go ahead and cancel it. So I will not deploy. This is one way, and then when you provide it, it will go ahead and deploy. Another way is that providing this value using a parameter file. So how do you do this parameter file? Let me go ahead. So this is the parameter file. Parameters has to be a JSON file. So I have already created a JSON file, but as you can see, it's an empty JSON file. And for that, what I have to provide is the easiest way in Azure Visual Studio Code is have the Azure Resource Manager template extension installed, and then the moment you type in a JSON file this, you get a couple of options. The option that we are looking at is this one. So it gives you a blank JSON schema file for your parameter. Now here we don't have any parameter as of now, but we are going to create that, and for that we will again do this control and space, and it will automatically give me what I can do here on this particular part. And I'll go ahead and say I need a parameter which should have a value, and for that what I'm going to do, just give me a moment. Yeah, so for that what I'm going to do is, what parameter I need. So this is the parameter I definitely need. I'll go ahead and create this, and the value that I want to have is East US. So I could have provided this value using the command line interface, where when it was asking what value that you want to provide, or I can provide all these values in a JSON file. So here we have just one parameter that we want to provide, so it's one value, but it can have multiple values as well, until unless it does not violate the JSON file size. I mean, there is a size limit. Do not really recall what exactly, but yes, there is a size limit, so you cannot really have a bulky JSON file over here. Of course, it will not be bulky in terms of ARM template, I mean in terms of parameter file, but when we were not using Bicep, when we were using ARM template for even defining the infrastructure, not just parameter, then it used to happen when you may hit a size issue in complex environment. Anyway, so here the nutshell thing that we are trying to focus here is that you have to have parameter here in this file, and then those parameters are mandatory to have, which do not have a default value. So if you want to create another parameter, you can create that. There is no problem in it, and for that I'll name it like this. And then what I'm saying is, so I'm saying for this time the deployment will happen to prod, not the stage. That is the default thing. And yeah, having said that, now you have this parameter file, you can save it, and you can do the deployment. Let me check what I'm trying to find is the short name of parameter file. Anyway, what I will do, storage parameter file, and here's that we parameter.json. So this should be good, and if I provide that, or maybe instead of create, what you can do here is, what if, so instead of creating, you can also, this is another feature of AZ extension in that you can see what will happen if we are to deploy this particular parameter, I mean this particular Azure Bicep file. And this can be used for sanity check. I mean, you can check, for using this word, I mean you can test your code if it is validating all the all the braces, all the spaces and everything, and then it will show you if everything is going good, then what will happen if you will apply this particular file. It's kind of a plan, for if you compare it with Terraform, and then you can apply it. Instead of what if, you say go ahead and create it. So you can see what it will do. It will go ahead and create a storage account with this blah blah name and all those things. So it's you and blah. Now we will go ahead and click on enter, and what will happen here is, go ahead and open the portal. So far no deployment, but soon it will start deploying it. Up here. Yep, so it's running. So we should, as you can see, it's deploying, and it is still deploying. So you can see your deployment status here, and let this finish. then I will show you how to see different things in a deployment. So as soon as it is finished, we can actually see what happened in the portal, or we can see here as well. Wait for a while. Yep. So as you can see, it has created a storage account resource, and these are the values, different values that you have, and then it is showing, that what by resource group, what are the different value, and then there was the output, and what was the output, this is the output. So all these things it is showing up to you. Now if we go to the portal and we see that it has deployed, and we can see what are the resources that has been deployed, and I can really go ahead and look into that storage account. Now right now I'll go back to the deployment, and here I can see what were the inputs. So what were the parameters that were given. So this was one of the parameters, this is one of the parameters. So whenever you deploy a bicep file and you want to see what are the values that was accepted during the deployment, you can go there and see. Similarly, it will show you the output, what output that you had this in, bicep file. So as many output you can define. Let me go there. Yeah. So here we have defined just one output. So it is just showing one thing in output, two things in parameter, nothing in variable because it's internal to the template. Now if we want to define multiple outputs, we want to show these are the things that happened. You want to create a log analytics workspace, maybe you want to show the log analytics workspace name, you are creating virtual machine, you may want to show a IP address of that virtual machine. So those kind of quick view metadata of the value, or of the resources that you have deployed using that template, you can easily show up here in the output. Or you can use it when you are using modular architecture of bicep, and that we will be talking about in upcoming session. Now it also shows you what the template it has generated. So internally it is still using the ARM template. The bicep is still generating a ARM template for you that you used to generate earlier when bicep was not there, if you have used ARM template. But those who are not who have never used ARM template, then that's okay, no need to see these details. But yes, if you are familiar with ARM template, then you can actually see what ARM template was generated on the run by Azure, and then it got deployed or applied on the Azure resource. So this is the way you can define parameters, variables, then use it, and then show things in output. I'll go ahead and delete this resource group. Make sure I'm not keeping anything that will eat my resources in subscription. And yeah, that's it. So whenever you do any kind of testing in Azure, just to make sure you are so just to make sure that you are deleting all the resources that you do during the lab. Anyway, so this is it from me for today, and just let me know in feedback in the comment section of YouTube, or you can connect me over LinkedIn and share your feedback. How do you like this session? If you want me to cover any specific section of bicep, or if you have any feedback for the sessions that I have already done. Thanks so much for watching. Have a good day.